Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, I was watching one of the programs that's on TV, and it was with Bill Dance, who's probably the oldest, most respected national fisherman through at least my lifetime. And he had his daughter on the show, and they were fishing with pop R's. And it made me think, you know, the one thing maybe I haven't spoken enough about to people over the years is the fact that, you know, we talk about catching fish on the surface. And the pop-R is a lure that was made many years ago. It was made by Rebel. And when I used to work for Pradco, the company that owned Rebel, this was one of the lures that we featured, and it was a great lure. But in today's world, it looks like something old-fashioned, and it is, but it's still extremely effective. And here's the reason. Using a pop-R, you throw it out, and it sits on the surface, and you're trying to get fish to come up and hit it off the surface. So you have to make it look like something. And the pop-R, if you pop it, it makes a gulping sound on the water, and those fish can hear that from a long ways away, and they can come and see it, and it looks like something maybe a frog or something trying to hop over the water. And the significance of what I'm trying to talk about today is that all these surface lures, they all require maybe a little bit different way of working that you put into them to make them go across the surface and become attractive to the fish. One of the really popular lures that is out right now is called a whopper plopper, and it's a real easy lure to use, and it doesn't require the finesse, I don't think, that what the pop-R or some of these other lures did. With that, it makes a noise, and there's a propeller on the back of it, and once you start reeling it, it makes a real strong sound on the surface, and then the body becomes something that the fish might think is alive and want to hit it. And my point is, to fish the surface correctly, you got to know what you're using and how to fish it the most effectively. You know, when we talk about fishing surface lures on our river for muskies, one of the lures that I've talked about is the horny toad, which is just a soft plastic bait that you hook like you Texas hook a worm, and with no weight, and you throw that, and it becomes almost weedless or snag-proof because the tip of the hook is buried in it, and you just start reeling that back to you, and it has little feet at the back, little plastic feet that as you reel it and it goes through the water, they plop up and down, and they do something the same thing as they do make a sound, and they make vibrations on the water, and they'll make a little trail. They'll push the water aside, and the fish can see that, and they'll come and hit it. You know, fishing the surface is something that really can work, especially in the summertime when the water gets warmer and the fish's metabolism really increases and they're really actively feeding. Fishing something on the surface sometimes becomes the best way to fish. And it brings up a whole nother thought I thought about when I thought about doing a spot on fishing the surface is, you know, when we go to a new body of water, and this is something that I want you to realize, a lot of times, you know, we think those big deep holes in the streams are where those fish are going to be, but those big deep holes are not the ideal place most of the time. They don't have the same amount of oxygen. They may have some cooler water near the bottom, but they are not the ideal places. But if you're going to fish deep spots, you need to be able to fish them with the right type of technique and tackle. And for fishing deeper water, I really recommend using something that's going to be more of a vertical presentation, straight down. And you can still cast out and it be vertical. You cast out and let whatever you use. And I think jigs or heavier lures work best for this. And in this case, you're trying to bring it up from the bottom and make that look like something escaping from the bottom when you're using a jig. And this is my tip for the best way to fish deeper water. And there's different aspects of all this, but you know, any lure that has the weight to go down, you want it to sink down. You're not trying to catch fish on the surface. You're trying to catch those fish that hang out near the bottom level of the water. And this is the best way I can recommend that you fish deeper water. And then there's current. Current is another thing that we have to realize that exists in most bodies of water. And the current is often a fish place too, because with current you get moving water. You get the fact that there's more oxygen, and you also get the fact that there's going to be baits or food that has fallen into the water that's being carried by the current down. So you have to learn how to fish the current. And that's why these pros that come up to the St. Lawrence River, let's face it, the St. Lawrence River has extreme current. And those fish are going to be looking for food in that current, and you got to learn how to fish it. And that can be very difficult for somebody that's never done it before. But that's where the new technique that emerged maybe a couple decades ago, using a drop shot, that's the effective way to fish the current. And that would work in any kind of waters. But I think it's really important when we decide to go to a new body of water, we have to realize, are we going to fish where it's deep? Are we going to fish shallow water? And what baits are we going to have, and what techniques are we going to use to do that? And the other technique that we have at our disposal is to be moving along with the fish, and that might be using a trolling motor or actually trolling with an outboard motor at a certain speed where you can cover large sections of water and you can keep your bait moving that way. And it doesn't depend on you having a certain technique of making it work through the water. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.